we go. One wheel.
What's up, guys? John and Tony here with the E-flite Commander mPd 1.4 meter. Man, it is a hot one out here in North Carolina today. If you can't tell from the haze and the damn rooster that won't shut up, I guess he's becoming a fan favorite now. We're going to be flying this bird initially on a Zeee 2200 120C pack. So let's go ahead and get her down on the ground. Today's lovely aside from the heat and the bugs. You might be able to see my head getting swarmed with gnats right now. Just such is life. Actually, before I even initialize this, let's make sure that throttle cut is enabled, which it is. Last thing I want to do is have it just randomly spin up. There's a lot of protections in these new ESCs where they shouldn't just do that, but you don't want to leave something like that to chance. Especially, I've seen what happens to people, and it ain't pretty. So, and I don't really feel like going to the hospital. All right, let's go ahead and tighten that down. Cool. Haven't flown in about a week. Shake off the rust. Those of you guys haven't seen, I have already modified this. We're using full span ailerons in addition to regular flaps. So this should be a lot of fun. Ugh, I got bugs all up on my eyes. This is gonna be amazing. All right, get a click of flaps going here, turn the voice up.
Battery 16.6.
First time flying off pavement. Feels almost tail heavy, but I know she's not.
Wing normal.
There we go. That was what it was. I was in my Harrier flap setup.
30 seconds. Battery 16.1.
We're going to do a lot less of the flipping and tumbling that I would normally do. Try to be a little bit more aerobatic today. Snap roll. Bring her back in.
Battery 15.7 volts.
See if we can do a slow roll. As good as I could do it with the bugs that are going in my ears.
At this point, the bugs are eating Tony alive. He is frantically trying to keep this plane in focus the entire time while he's dancing with the camera, or so it seems from my perspective, trying to keep the insects out of his face, ears, and arms.
It's a fun little model. So today we're going to be doing the final review for it. As you can see, it flies excellently.
Battery 14.9 volts.
It really locked in. One of the better flying props that I've gotten, although I don't feel like much beats the Timber and the extra that Horizon put out. But in terms of aerobatic sport models, I'd say this is a pretty good model, and I think you guys will really enjoy it. So if I had to give it right now my final review score, I would say this model is a solid
2 minutes.
7 out of 10. I feel like I could have used a bigger ESC, one that's less prone to potentially overheating. The 45 amp ESC in it, let's put it in safe real quick, just so I can scratch my arm. There's bugs all over the place. The 45 amp ESC is a little prone to being on the edge of performance. I feel like you could just put a 60 in there as a good upgrade. Shouldn't have to, I think it should have come with it. But another detraction that I have is I'm not really a big fan of the stock servos, although they are working well. So, you know, a little bit higher quality servos would have gotten it at a 9, in my opinion. The ESC can be kind of overlooked. Another thing that really keeps me from giving it a solid 10 is the inability to do a proper hammerhead. Well, there it goes. Okay, never mind. So make it an 8 out of 10. I don't know why it wasn't doing it Sug Farm the other day when I flew it last time. Let's try left this time. All right, so it's doing it. This does do rolling Harriers too.
Battery 15.3 volts. 3 minutes.
Watch out for those trees out there. It's difficult to do some of these maneuvers, man. My arms are like covered in gnats, and so is my ear. It's very distracting out here. Check the voltage.
Battery 14.9 volts.
It's got plenty of authority. Tony's like doing a dance over there trying to keep up with it. I think I'm maybe being a little too crazy for him. Need me to slow it down, boss?
No, it's the bugs.
Oh, the bugs, okay. Yep, it's the bugs. It's that time of year, man. Do some slow inverted flight. Does outside loops and everything just fine.
14.7 volts.
Let's bring it up and make it do, if we can get it to do a knife edge spin. I don't think it will. Well, I got a better flat spin by giving it the command for a knife edge
4
spin.
minutes.
All right, I think we're about ready to bring her down. So wind's coming from my left here. We're gonna go ahead and land. Take a couple steps back for me, boss.
Battery 14.8 volts.
See how well she does on pavement?
flaps.
Full flaps coming in. Looking good. Try not to over control. Pretty gentle. Aside from that slight bit of over control on the ground loop that I had there,
Flaps
or
up.
the potential ground loop. Definitely does not want to go straight on the ground. I don't know if that's P factor or just because the tail wheel is maybe not aligned, but I got to give it
Battery
a
15
decent
volts.
amount of rudder input to get it to go relatively straight.
Engine reverse. Engine normal.
Reverse thrust works good too. Overall, I like it. It's a good model. I think you guys will enjoy it too. I believe it's currently $299. If you can pick it up at horizonhobby.com or your local hobby shop, I'd say go for it, man. A couple of mods to get it to do full span ailerons. You can't argue with it. You really can't.
15.5 volt.
We're gonna go ahead and back her up. This is the stock
Engine normal.
ESC.
Flaps
You can
50.
easily reprogram it. There's somehow somebody got the idea that you couldn't. I don't know where that's coming from. Hopefully this video should be a little bit better. Tony is not getting attacked by bugs anymore from what I can see, which should make it a lot better. Using a lot of right rudder to stabilize the P factor. Takes a bit
Flaps up.
of finesse to get her up in the air, and I almost pulled the reverse
Battery
thrust lever thinking I needed to lift
volts.
my gear.
That would have been hilarious.
That would have been very hilarious and very stupid. Go up and tumble real quick. This is a very, very fun little model, and it actually does the proper, hammerheads now. Could be a little bit better.
Battery
You gotta
16 volts.
really manage your airspeed to get it to do it just right. Let's go straight up in a wall. Let's bring her up and see if we can get her to do a knife edge spin
6
correctly this
minutes.
time. Okay, she doesn't. Sometimes they just don't want to do it. So instead of a knife edge spin, what we'll do is we'll bring her back, get ready for a tumble, my friend. I'm gonna do a full speed tumble from right to left. We're gonna stay
Battery
high so we don't go into the
15.4
trees. That is some serious G-force right there, man. Did you catch that?
Mhm.
Cool.
Full
Bring the flaps out, come in nice and slow for a little bit. You can hear the plane creaking and groaning because of the type of foam that's used. It's EPO, but there's a lot of, what do you want to call it? Room for play, and you can hear the paint kind of
Battery
grinding around.
15.7 volts.
This plane is really easy to fly, nice and slow as long as the wings are level like this. It's not a Harrier
Flaps up.
machine by any stretch of the imagination. It does do amazing tumbles. Holds a knife edge pretty
7
decent,
minutes.
although you gotta give it some back pressure, which as Tony mentioned earlier when he was flying off camera, that it is much more preferable to fly knife edge pulling back towards you than it is away from you.
Battery 15.2
It feels much more
volts.
natural to me, in my opinion. Than it does to have the plane want to come at your face. Although that little creaking it's making, it's kind of funny. It handles these G-forces
Battery 14.8
quite
volts.
well. It still does the rolling Harrier. Well, it did until my hand started slipping. I gotta wipe my hands off on my shorts. There we go. That should help out a little bit. Summertime, it's harder to do some of these moves because my hands aren't as stable on the
minutes.
controller as they would normally be. So if I can get her to do it this time. Hold steady.
Battery 15.2 volts.
Also have to watch out for the trees. Again, we were flying at Sug Farm, which is an open field with some trees around it. Here, there's trees everywhere except for left and right. Trying to be kind of gentle to the ESC. It's warmer out here and I don't want it to overheat. If it does though, it will cut back to 60 degrees
volts.
Fahrenheit, or sorry, 60% thrust as long as you pull the stick back when you hear the motor beep. Coming in full speed. It's not a speed demon, but it's pretty quick. I'd say about 80 miles an hour. For a prop plane, that's not bad. Especially when you can get it to come out of a snap and a tumble like that. It looks really cool while still maintaining some of the velocity.
Battery 14.6 volts.
All right, we probably should get ready to land it. We'll bring it back up here in a few. But before we do that, I want to make a quick blender. Handles the G-forces, no problem. All right, we're gonna get ready to land. Looks like we can land any direction we want, but the models are all behind me and to my right, and I would rather land right to left, especially since the wind, whatever wind we have picked up today, has been coming from behind Tony and behind me currently where the plane is facing. Here we go.
Full flaps. Engine reversed. Engine flaps.
That was a very, very crappy landing. I mean, it was a three-pointer in the end, but it just wanted to float in forever, and I didn't realize it had as much thrust as it did. Some of the reason why I'm going to caution against doing what I just did, not because there was any risk to the airframe too much, but more just it's kind of sloppy looking to land so far away from yourself. This is a good plane to practice P factor with too, because I have to use a lot of rudder to keep it going relatively straight on the ground.
Engine reversed. Engine
So
throttle
we'll come back in a little bit. Good little plane. Again, review score, I'd say about 8 out of 10. Unless something drastically changes today, I think that's about where it's going to stay. Definitely a buy. Some stuff could be totally improved though. We'll cover that in a little bit. Everything in this plane is stock except the receiver. I put in the AR637 and just copied the settings over because I wanted the extra antenna. Sometimes I fly a little further away from myself. Let's get her on the front wheels here without flaps. She actually kind of flies better without flaps on takeoff.
20 seconds.
There's a pretty good hammerhead stall thing. I don't know what you would call that, like a wall.
Seconds.
Does a waterfall too. Not a perfect one, but. So we're still reviewing this plane as our final thoughts. I'd say, again, I still stick with the 8 out of 10. Any plane that can tumble this well, I'm pretty happy with. But your mileage and your flying knots may vary. Really up to you what your personal preferences are, but in my opinion, this plane holds up really well. Knife edge is like a charm. All you gotta do is hold some back elevator. At least at my center of gravity, which is around where the
1 minute.
recommended point is. Hope I'm not going too fast for you, bud. Gotta keep cognizant of what Tony's up to as well. It's very agile. Again, I didn't even change the servos out, which is something I would normally do. But, whoa, 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 whoa. Pulled a little too hard there on the I tried to snap it over too fast and the wing stalled as it came through. That's a classic accelerated stall. Let's show that again. Go a little higher. So if I turn over, even with thrust, see how it still stalls coming out of it and tries to bank to the right because one of the wings lost lift. That is an accelerated / asymmetric stall. If you don't know what to expect and you don't know why it's doing that, just stop pulling the elevator so hard and you probably won't have any issues.
2 minutes.
This is not a stall, this is just me being crazy. These tumbles this plane can do are out of this world. You can hear the foam like clicking and popping as it rubs the paint against the paint. If it's just foam to foam, it doesn't normally make too many sounds, but if it's paint rubbing against paint, especially if it's like a water-based paint, it tends to make some sticky sounds. Try to hover it. This is not a hovering model, at least not with the motor that's currently in it.
Full flaps. Flaps up.
Let's do some touch and goes a little bit with it. Take a step off the pavement here. Step back so he can see.
Full flaps.
Yeah, doing these tail dragger touch and goes are fun on pavement.
3 minutes.
That's a goofy
Flaps
takeoff.
up.
Very close to those trees too.
Full flaps.
Way too
Flaps
fast.
up.
Oh man, it's so hard to concentrate out here with all these gnats trying to fly into your ears. You ever hear that sound when you're flying and you're like, "Zzz,"
Full flaps.
or if you're trying to do what Tony's doing, which is shoot video too, it's super obnoxious. That was a pretty
Flaps
decent
up.
touch and go. You can hear the foam so much. I think when Tony was flying this plane, I think he said it flies a lot like the Pitts does, the big FMS Pitts, but it doesn't feel like flying a bowling ball. Or a bowling ball with wings, which is kind of what the Pitts feels like sometimes. So it's got
Full
like that
flaps.
Pitts-like response, but it's still a good plane to fly.
4 minutes.
Level out those wings a little bit. I was almost slipping it in
Flaps
the
up.
wrong way. Yeesh. I need to get better at this.
Battery 14.7 volts.
All right, a couple more touch and goes and then we'll wrap it up on this model and call it quits. You guys have seen how it flies off grass. Now you're seeing how it flies off pavement. It's pretty good. It has a lot of P factor on pavement though. So my score overall is still about 8 out of 10.
Flaps
A
up.
little janky there. Just come in and do some one wheel touch and goes too. But yeah, I mean, you gotta watch out for that P factor on the
Battery
pavement.
14.6
If you're not
volts.
really controlling the direction of the plane with the rudder, you're gonna have some issues with it for sure. Flying these tail wheels is nothing like flying a tricycle
Full
wheel.
flaps.
They have P factor too, but man, it's so much more apparent with the tail draggers rather.
Five minutes.
There we go.
Flaps up.
One wheel. It's not that hard to do. You just gotta get better at controlling
Battery
your
14.3
attitude,
volts.
which is something I'm not gonna brag about just yet because I have to get a bit better at that. Maybe try one more time.
Battery
Yeah, screw it. We'll call it here. Make the final thoughts on the plane and then give you guys, again, these are all unfiltered thoughts
Full
too.
flaps.
Like I'm not paid to talk about models at all. I just work with my hobby shop to talk about Hangar 18 Hobbies, who has definitely sponsored us to help us get where we want to be in the radio control community.
Engine reversed. Engine full. Flaps up.
Almost
Engine
hit that.
reversed.
So yeah, Hangar 18 has been a really good hobby shop to work with.
And battery
I love working with them.
14.8
Brian's
volts.
awesome. So are the staff. And to get the opportunity to fly all these models from Horizon and just talk about the models and not have to feel pressured to say things that are like, oh, it's the best thing ever or it's amazing. Because none of these models are the best thing ever. They're not all amazing. Sometimes they have quirks and sometimes they need some things done to them to make them fly better. This model, cutting the throttle, this model is really good. Again, I wouldn't say it's an 8 out of 10 if I didn't believe it. I did pay for this model out of pocket, contrary to some people who have commented in the past. This is a great model. It's really good if you're looking to get into aerobatics. If you set it up for full span ailerons the way I did, You know, what you really got to do is just extend the push rods just a little bit to make it work. If you do that, the plane's going to be good. And I personally like the way it flies with the ailerons in the prop wash rather than without. And I try to get that with every 3D plane or every aerobatic plane, because you get the most authority in the rolls and your snaps and everything else that you're doing, because you need that wash to really get the plane to roll as tight as it could otherwise. So overall, 8 out of 10. It could use a stronger motor, the servos could be better, and it could use a better ESC. I'd say if you're gonna do the upgrades to it, if you can find a motor that goes into this, let me know. I wanna upgrade it too and do some crazy Harriers with it. On the ESC, just upgrade to the 60 amp, that should be more than enough. The Avian, if you want the telemetry, you'll get it with that. And honestly, with the 60 amp, you could probably make this thing run I'd say you could probably get this to run a 13-inch prop, no problem, maybe a 13x5 or a 13x6. At that point, I think you'd probably get some serious performance out of it, even on the stock motor. Anyway, guys, it's been John and Tony, been real. We will see you all, guys, again next time. Cheers.